Paddlewheeler, paddlewheeler.
In 1899, she came on up the line. She's gonna make the Dawson City run. 300 miles or so where the Yukon waters flow. She's gonna serve the land of the midnight sun. To the Klondike land of gold, she'll sail the river bold, her whistle blowing steam at every turn. With the smoke arising high into the northern sky, oh, listen to that paddle-wheeler churn. Paddle-wheeler, paddle-wheeler, waiting on the Yukon River shore. Paddle-wheeler, paddle-wheeler, I hear the captain calling all aboard. There's a bearded sourdough and a greenhorn chichaco. They're lined on deck with 100 men or more. As the paddles heave and churn, their dreams so brightly burn. Oh, take them to the land of yellow ore. Oh, paddle-wheeler, toil where the rapids roll and boil. Take your cargo safe to journey's end. Then the whistle loudly blows, and every miner knows that Dawson City's just round the bend. Paddle-wheeler, paddle-wheeler, churning on the river proud and grand. Paddle-wheeler, paddle-wheeler, they say you're the queen of this land. For 50 years and some, she made the Dawson run. Then came the day they pulled her into shore. They set her high and dry while the river flows on by, and there she's gonna rest forevermore. Now the paddle-wheeler's gone, but the memories linger on to the day she was the queen in the land of gold. And I reckon that I hear her whistle loud and clear, blowing as it did in days of old. Paddle-wheeler, paddle-wheeler, resting on the Yukon River shore. Paddle-wheeler, paddle-wheeler, I reckon I can hear that all aboard. Paddle-wheeler resting on the shore, I reckon I can hear that all aboard. I left my cabin 3 days ago. I had to leave, the food supply was low. Been trapping in these hills since way last fall. I haven't seen a living soul at all. My home lies 100 miles away. I should be there sometime today. Oh, but that wind seems cold. Blow, north wind, blow. The snow is deep away up to my knees. I cannot stop, for if I do, I'll freeze. Been traveling down this trail day and night. I'm tired and so weary from this fight. It must be over 45 below. I face the wind, the driving snow. that wind feels cold. Blow, north wind, blow. Now the wind is stronger than before. I cannot seem to face it anymore. The cold has chilled my body to the bone. I wonder if I'll ever make it home. I've got to find a shelter from the storm and try again tomorrow morn. Oh, but that wind is cold. Blow, north wind, blow. Back at home, my family waits for me. I see the faces smiling back at me. My tears are frozen solid to my cheeks. I'm giving up, my body's warm and weak. Now listen to that north wind howl and scream, so far away in my dream. Oh, but that wind sounds cold. Blow, north wind, blow. Blow, north wind, blow. Blow, north wind, blow. Well, this was the Yukon, it was wild, it was free. Where gold and the Klondike made Yukon history. When the northern wind is blowing, listen and you'll hear the echo of the Yukon from the days of yesteryear. Well, gold was found near Dawson Town in 1898, and the miners came to stake a claim for fortune or for fame, with a pick and pan for every man and a blanket for the cold. Like a winding chain they came and came to look for yellow gold. Well, this was the Yukon, it was wild, it was free. Where gold and the Klondike made Yukon history. When the northern wind is blowing, listen and you'll hear the echo of the Yukon from the days of yesteryear. Well, the men were rough and the women tough. Some lived a life of sin. Some gave their soul for an ounce of gold or a drink of whiskey then. The dance-hall girls with their long black curls stood by the doors so bold. They'd wave their thumbs, say, miners, come and bring a poke of gold. Well, this was the Yukon, it was wild, it was free. Where gold and the Klondike made Yukon history. When the northern wind is blowing, listen and you'll hear the echo of the Yukon from the days of yesteryear. Well, there was Dan McGrew and a gal named Lou in the Yukon Chichaco. There was Windy Ike and a one-eyed Mike and a cotton-fingered Joe. There was Sam McGee from Tennessee and a man called Ace High Dan. There was Muckluck Nag and a hairless Dag and a Dawson Queenie Ann. Well, this was the Yukon, it was wild, it was free. Where gold and the Klondike made Yukon history. When the northern wind is blowing, listen and you'll hear the echo of the Yukon from the days of yesteryear. Then came the day so dark and gray, the Dawson lights were dim, and the only sound from the hills around was the wail of a northern wind. Old Dawson town had settled down, the gold rush days are gone, and the days of old are stories told, for the memories linger on. Well, this was the Yukon, it was wild, it was free. Where gold and the Klondike made Yukon history. When the northern wind is blowing, listen and you'll hear the echo of the Yukon from the days of yesteryear. This was the Yukon, it was wild, it was free. Where gold and the Klondike made Yukon history. When the northern wind is blowing, listen and you'll hear the echo of the Yukon from the days of yesteryear. the echo of the Yukon from the days of yesteryear. Someday I'll be leaving the Yukon, leaving this valley behind, and I'll take with me all of the memories that deep in my heart are entwined. And in time when I feel a little lonely, I'll think of the days that used to be. Then I'll open to a page of my treasures in my book of Yukon Memories. I'll remember the mountains and their splendor, reaching away up in the sky, and the valley so peaceful below them, a cool mountain stream flowing by. I'll remember the bright nights of summer, the sun casting shadows through the trees. Then I'll turn another page of my treasures in my book of Yukon Memories. I'll remember the times that I've wandered the streets of an old mining town, and the romance of days gone forever. It's written in the ruins lying round. The spell of the Yukon will linger, the memories my loneliness will ease. There's no end to my pages of treasures in my book of Yukon Memories. In my book of Yukon Memories. In the Arctic land of cold, there's a story that is told of a ship that's roaming o'er the Arctic Sea, with an iceberg for a keel and a north wind at her wheel, the strangest ship they say there'll ever be. Where the northern oceans roll, she roams around the pole, still frozen in the ice and riding high. She's been seen by many men as she comes and goes again. She's a phantom of the Arctic passing by. They call her the SS Beijimo. She's the phantom of the Arctic, the Beijimo. You may see her passing by on an iceberg high and dry. She's a phantom of the Arctic, the Beijimo. It was 1932, and the ship was almost through. She was sailing in the icy Bering Sea. With a crew of 39, she was racing for the time, for the wind was blowing cold and wintry. But the wind blew more and more, and pushed her close to shore, and soon the ship was frozen all around. They said that she was through, there was nothing left to do but leave the ship and move to solid ground. They call her the SS Beijimo. She's the phantom of the Arctic, the Beijimo. You may see her passing by on an iceberg high and dry. She's a phantom of the Arctic, the Beijimo. With a crew of 21, they would wait for spring to come. To melt the ice, the ship would then be free. Then one night they were at rest. A wind came from the west and broke the ice, then set the ship to sea. They found her one fine day, she was 50 miles away, still frozen in the ice and riding high. They left her there to roam in the Arctic Sea alone, a phantom of the Arctic passing by. They call her the SS Beijimo. She's the phantom of the Arctic, the Beijimo. You may see her passing by on an iceberg high and dry. She's a phantom of the Arctic, the Beijimo. They call her the SS Beijimo. She's the phantom of the Arctic, the Beijimo. You may see her passing by on an iceberg high and dry. She's a phantom of the Arctic, the Beijimo. She's the phantom of the Arctic, the Beijimo. Buckets of steel, rusty and old, finished the dredging and digging for gold. Mountains of gravel on the riverbank lay. The old Yukon dredge is silent today. Gone is the gold, the engines are cold, rusty and old, buckets of steel. Rusty and old, buckets of steel.
Rusty and old, buckets of steel.
Buckets of steel for 60 long years. The engines were humming and turning the gears, grinding and straining, the chain goes around, taking those buckets down deep in the ground. Digging on down, searching around, deep in the ground, buckets of steel. Rusty and old, buckets of steel.
Rusty and old, buckets of steel.
Buckets of steel that rumble and roar, digging up gravel from the riverbank floor. Fortune they've carried from the bedrock below. Now it's all over, the old dredge must go. The bedrock below is empty, we know. The dredge must go. Buckets of steel, rusty and old, buckets of steel.
Rusty and old, buckets of steel.
Buckets of steel are empty and still. The engines are silent, no buckets to fill. Resting there under the blue northern sky, we will remember as we say goodbye. Empty and still, no buckets to fill. Remember we will. Buckets of steel, gone is the gold. The engines are cold, rusty and old, buckets of steel.
Rusty and old, buckets of steel.
Rusty and old, buckets of steel. the 98 trail when the Klondike was mined for its gold, of the miners that came to seek fortune and fame, and the heartaches they suffered untold. They came far and wide like an incoming tide, and in Skagway they shouted, "Oh, hail!" With a loaded full pack settled high on the back, they left on the 98 trail. They started their climb up the mountain incline, and the song that they sang was for gold. And higher their lungs seemed afire, their faces were numb with the cold. They slipped and they fell, they screamed and they yelled, their faces turned haggard and pale. They cried, "Help me please," as they fell to the knees and died on the 98 trail. Like a long flowing mass, they came over the pass, all covered with ice and with snow. In the mountains so high, they rang with a cry, Lake Bennett is down there below. On the shores of the lake, boats that had made the rest of the way they would sail. No time for rest, had to leave on their quest of gold on the 98 trail. More heartache and pain for the miners there came on the waters that boil and churn, and they never knew if they'd ever get through round the bend of the river's next turn. The strongest shall stand was the law of the land, the weaker shall perish and fail. They made the next bend to Dawson and the end of the 98 trail.
Northland in this far Northland.
From the shores of the Atlantic to Alaska's Bering Sea, to the tundra of the Arctic, there's a country wild and free. Well, here there lies a mystery that many men will tell. Linger and you're sure to fall a victim of her spell. Oh, give me this far Northland. They say there is gold in her sand. She's got more than yellow gold in her heart that she'll hold. Northland in this far Northland. Now some folks like the city and some the prairie wide. There's some that like the ocean or the rolling countryside. There's some that like to gamble where the racing derbies run. There's some that like the challenge in the land of the midnight sun. Oh, give me this far Northland. They say there is gold in her sand. She's got more than yellow gold in her heart that she'll hold. Northland in this far Northland. From the window of my cabin, I see a starry sky, and the northern lights are whispering as they go dancing by. They tell me that the time will come when all the world will know she's got more than yellow gold and more than ice and snow. Oh, give me this far Northland. They say there is gold in her sand. She's got more than yellow gold in her heart that she'll hold. Northland in this far Northland. She's got more than yellow gold in her heart that she'll hold. Northland in this far Northland. Northland in this far Northland. In the gold rush days of the Yukon, Many long years ago, gold was the word and the cry was heard. Let's find that Yukon gold. They came from the wide world over. They fought with the wind and the cold. Down the river they came, chanting the name of gold, Yukon gold. Now Carmack's an old taggish Charlie, another man called Skookum Jim. On Bonanza they made the discovery of gold and the miners came in. They staked every hill in the Klondike, looking for old Mother Lode. They fought and they tried and many men died for gold, Yukon gold. On the Klondike they built Dawson City. Oh, how that town did grow. The fever ran high and this was the cry. It's gold, Yukon gold. With dance halls, the music and gambling, the whiskey like water did flow. And a fortune was made by gamblers who played for gold, Yukon gold. Well, a gold-bottom creek in Bonanza, a fortune lay there in the sand. They came by the thousands to find it. With shovels they dug up the land. They staked every hill in the Klondike, looking for old Mother Lode. They fought and they tried and many men died for gold, Yukon gold. Then the old gold rush days were over. The buildings were silent and old. Everywhere you could see a haunting memory of gold, Yukon gold. Now a new wave of the gold rush has started. There are new dance halls and gambling, I'm told, and a chanting new cry with a sharp eagle's eye for gold, Yukon gold. For gold, Yukon gold. For gold, Yukon gold. You have heard the lonely wail of a siren, of an ambulance speeding through the town. Or maybe you have heard the hiss and roaring of an African lion prowling round. Or the wild piercing cry of a tiger at night as he stalks his prey. Or the railroad locomotive whistle as it sped through the night on its way. But the sounds of the jungle are a whisper. You've heard not, I assure you, till I've told of the blood-curdling cry of the key-bird in the North Arctic through a frigid cold. For its crying is so awe-inspiring, and it curdles the blood, so I'm told, as the key-bird is flying round the Arctic, crying kee-kee-kee right, but it's cold. Well, they call it key-bird of the Arctic. It's large, it's hideous, and it's bold. In the night as it circles round the Arctic, crying kee-kee-kee right, but it's cold. Hunters, while resting in their igloo, toss fretfully round in their sleep, while the huskies a-sleeping in the snowbank started burrowing way down deep. For there's strange things happen in the Arctic, and many weird tales they have told, but their voices all drop to a whisper at the cry, kee-kee ripes, but it's cold. Well, they call it key-bird of the Arctic. It's large, it's hideous, and it's bold. in the night as it circles round the Arctic, crying kiki ripes, but it's cold. 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 Crying kiki ripes, but it's cold.